Hi everyone, Susan Storm here, and today I want to talk about the FiNi loop. If you're an ISFP and you've ever felt really paralyzed and stuck, like you're overwhelmed with your emotions and a sense that things are not going to work out in the future, it's possible that you're in an FiNi loop. Today we're going to break down signs that you could be in a loop. We're going to explain what that is if you're not familiar with the cognitive functions and if you're not familiar with looping. And we're also going to look at some ways to cope with the loop and to snap out of that process. And I hope this will be really helpful. If you're not sure who I am, I'm the founder of psychologyjunkie.com, and I'm also a certified MBTI practitioner. And I've also written a book about type called Discovering You, Unlocking the Power of Personality Type. Let's go ahead and get right into it. So let's start by breaking down what an FiNi loop is. If you're new to the cognitive functions, you might be really feeling ungrounded and out of your depth here, and that's totally okay. That's how I felt when I was first learning about loops 10 years ago. I was like, what in the world is this? And I feel like I don't know anything. But we're going to break this down for anyone, even a beginner. So the cognitive functions are basically the mental tools you use in order to understand the world around you, make decisions, and also understand the world inside yourself. So for ISFPs, your cognitive functions, the mental tools that you use, are stacked like this. Introverted feeling. This is your dominant function. This is the function that's the easiest for you to use. It's the most energizing for you to use. It doesn't really take a lot of concerted effort because you just live and breathe this particular cognitive function. This is also your decision-making function. So when you have a decision to make, you are going to look at your values, what you feel is personally right and wrong, what you feel is personally important to you, what matters right down in your heart and soul. Introverted feeling helps you to stay authentic and aligned with your core values. It's less concerned with what everyone else thinks, what the world is telling you to be, and it's a very individualistic function. It's very interested in just staying true to yourself, even if that means marching to the beat of your own drum. Next, we have extroverted sensing. This is your auxiliary function. This supports your dominant function. So if you have introverted feeling and it's not supported by extroverted sensing, then it can become very controlling to the point where you're just completely driven by your emotions without the balance of real world experiences, facts, and details in the actual world and environment around you. So extroverted sensing is your connection to the present moment. It helps you to interact with the world through your senses, whether it's appreciating a beautiful sunset, getting lost in the flow of a creative project, tasting a new food and really savoring each nuance and flavor. Extroverted sensing keeps you grounded, alert, and in touch with reality. So you can understand why both functions are really, really important and they need to work in tandem. Next, we have introverted intuition. This is your tertiary function. This also helps to support your whole personality. Introverted intuition is the part of you that will imagine and predict future scenarios. It's a part of you that looks for deeper meaning and wonders what's going on under the surface. It's the part of you that isn't as interested in the facts and details of the real world, but is looking for more of an abstract understanding of things. When you're asking yourself, like, where am I going to be in 10 years? Or what does the future hold for me? What is the real meaning of why this interaction happened? I know the facts of what happened, but what does it really mean? What's going on behind the curtain? When you think of things like this, you're using introverted intuition. Now, if you get stuck looping between introverted feeling and introverted intuition without the support of extroverted sensing, this is when your premonitions can get a little off kilter. This is when you can start to feel more ungrounded. You can start to feel more paranoid. You can feel a little bit more like the future ahead of you is ominous and there's this terrible thing that's going to happen. And you read into your emotions a lot, looking for a big picture meaning behind them. And while this isn't always a bad thing when extroverted sensing is in the picture as well, it's bad when you're looping because you're not trusting the facts, you're not trusting the reality, you're getting more and more out of touch with the details of the real world. You're becoming less mindful to the real world, to your physical self, to people around you, and instead you're looping back and forth between introverted feeling, your emotions, your values, and introvert intuition, which is this more hazy, abstract understanding of the deeper meaning behind things. But it becomes very ungrounded, and it can lead to a lot of paranoia and even a lot of really intense melancholy feelings. Your inferior function is another extroverted function. It's called extroverted thinking. Now, your inferior function takes a lot of concerted effort to use. We talked about your dominant function. That one does not take a lot of energy to use because it feels very natural. It feels very energizing. You want to use it. Extroverted thinking is your inferior function. This one takes a lot of energy to use. Just like if you're a right-handed person, it takes a lot of work for you to write with your left hand. If you are an introverted feeling dominant type, like an ISFP or an INFP, when you're using extroverted thinking, it's just like using that non-preferred hand. It feels like it takes a lot of concentration and effort, and you can get really tired out in a brief amount of time from using it. Extroverted thinking helps you to stay organized and see things objectively without the input of your feelings. It's often the hardest function for you to access, and that's okay, because that isn't your powerhouse. Your powerhouse is introverted feeling, extroverted sensing, but you still need that extroverted thinking input. And as you get into your 30s and 40s, typically that's when extroverted thinking starts to develop more, and you find yourself looking at things with that little more balance of that objective, logic-focused, efficiency-focused extroverted thinking. So like I said, when you fall into a loop, you are bouncing back and forth between introverted feeling and introverted intuition. You're pulling away from the world. You're pulling away from reality. So your introverted functions are all about the world inside you, and that's really important. But the extroverted functions are also important. And each of the 16 Myers-Briggs personality types has an introverted side and an extroverted side. And it's bad for any personality type to completely cut off either side of their personality type. It means that they are going to be more one-sided, imbalanced, have to deal with some really pesky issues and situations like we're going to be talking about. So I once knew an ISFP who had written a book, and it was a self-help book. It was actually amazing. She was a psychologist, and is a psychologist, and she just needed to send it to the publisher. And a lot of crises were happening in her life at this point, and she really started to pull away. And she ended up getting into an FiNi loop, and she talked to me about this. She talked about being in this loop, and she said that she just felt like if she sent this book to a publisher, they would laugh at her, they would think it was terrible, they would immediately, they wouldn't respond to her at all. It would just be a total failure, and she would never be able to write again. And she didn't want to let go of that dream of being an author, so she just felt like she was stuck. And instead of doing anything about it, she just pulled away. She stayed at home. She watched TV all day. She went to get tarot card readings and things like that. She just felt like there was nothing she could do. She was looking for some kind of mystical understanding of the situation, but she really just needed to take that step and send the book to a publisher. And when she did, it actually got accepted. But snapping out of that loop is really tough, because as an introvert, you feel like this is your cozy place. Even if you're paranoid and overwhelmed, it still feels kind of natural to you to stay parked in that introverted space. So now let's talk about some signs that you are in this FiNi loop. Number 1, you're constantly imagining this worst case scenario, and you have this really strong belief that it's going to happen, but you don't actually have a lot of facts to back that up. Number 2, you've lost touch with the action-oriented, grounded side of yourself. You're normally this very spontaneous, flexible, grounded, practical, realistic person. And now you feel like you are not at all. Like you feel like everything is about your feelings and everything is about these hunches and you're trusting your gut. But you also feel like, something could happen around you and you'd be totally oblivious to it. Number 3, you hate your circumstances, but you feel like you can't change anything. You feel stuck. You feel paralyzed. You feel like there's nothing you can do to enact change. Number 4, you're becoming withdrawn, disconnected from the real world outside of yourself. You're becoming disconnected from your relationships and the people that matter to you. You're becoming a hermit, and it might be having negative implications on your relationships as well. So how do you break free from the loop? The answer is reconnecting with that extroverted part of yourself. And it might feel kind of like you don't want to do that, but it's actually really important. Now, this doesn't mean you have to become an extrovert. There's nothing wrong with being an introvert. You still need plenty of time to recharge on your own, but you need to make bite-sized bits of time every day to connect with that extroverted side of yourself as well. One of the first things you can do is get active in the real world. One thing I suggest personally is either meditating or taking nature walks. These two things can be really good. When you take a walk in nature, don't spend all that time in your head. Actually, to focus on observing the world around you. Try to find as many different birds as you can find. Try to smell the flowers. Literally stop and smell the roses. Notice all the physical details. Really take in the fresh air. Savor each deep breath that you take in. Become aware of your senses. Let your senses become alive. Instead of just being up here in your anxiety and your imagination, these worst case scenarios, instead become present to your surroundings, but also to your physical body. Breathe deeply and really feel the flow of your breath. Really allow it. Feel how your body relaxes when you do that. Another thing, meditation is really effective in this. You can find a guided meditation. You can just sit quietly and allow yourself to calm down, allow those worries to dissipate, work on progressive muscle relaxation if you need to. These are all really helpful ways to get back in touch with your extroverted sensing side. Second, test your ideas. A lot of times you have these thoughts and premonitions and inspirations that you just allow to stay stuck in your head. Instead of doing that, talk to someone about them. Call up a friend and say, hey, I've been really struggling with a lot of worry about this specific thing. Can I talk to you about it? And get some, constructive feedback that could help you to ground your ideas in reality. By doing this, you are awakening not only the extroverted sensing part of yourself, but the extroverted thinking, logical, objective part of yourself as well. And when you awaken these parts of yourself, they start to support you because that's their job. Their job is to give you balance and support. But if you're constantly sweeping them under the rug, they're not going to be able to do that. So ask for constructive feedback about your ideas, whether it's an inspiration you have or whether it's this gloomy fear that's been bothering you. Ask for constructive feedback or test your idea. If you have a manuscript and you want to publish it, send it. Even if you fail, even if it doesn't work, at least you will know then and you can course correct and try again. Lastly, embrace a little bit of novelty in your life. So extroverted sensing loves novelty. It really inspires extroverted sensing. So this means trying new things. It could be trying a new recipe, going to a new restaurant, walking somewhere new. It could be going to a concert or a movie or getting in the car and going on an impromptu road trip. That's always my favorite, even though I hardly ever do it. So do something novel, shake things up a little bit, get out of a routine, get out of a rut and try something new. Sometimes it's just taking that first step is all it takes. And you don't have to go fly off to France, although maybe that is what works for you. I mean, I'm a little jealous, but maybe that would be the thing. But you could do something simple, like say, instead of going home after work, I'm going to go to the state park and take a walk for 15 minutes. You can set little small goals and they can get bigger as you go. But the more you do this, the more you awaken your extroverted sensing side and your personality starts to become balanced and aligned. And you will start to feel yourself snapping out of this paranoia, this feeling of being stuck. Now, I do want to make a caveat here. Depression and anxiety can also have this effect on anyone, where you feel like you're stuck, where you feel like there's nothing you can do, everything's going to turn out wrong. So we don't want to mistake actual depression and anxiety with a loop. Okay, so if you're trying these things and they're not having an impact for you, it could be that you need to actually speak to a professional counselor or therapist and get some help in that way. As someone, I personally struggle with anxiety and depression, so I know just how overwhelming that can be and how much you can feel like there's no hope when you're in that situation. So I don't want to give the illusion that everything can be answered with typology. It can help, absolutely, but sometimes you need something more. So don't be afraid to talk to a therapist, talk to a counselor, reach out to a hotline if you need to, get help, get some professional help, because sometimes that is really the best avenue. So don't ignore that possibility as well. So what about you? Have you ever been in a loop? Have you ever gotten yourself out of a loop? Do you have any advice for other people who might be watching this video, other ISFPs? Or do you need more advice? Do you have more questions? Be sure to leave a comment. I will try to get back to you as soon as I can. Those comments really matter to me. They are very important to me. Would love to hear from you. Other people watching this might have advice as well. So don't be afraid to leave a comment, and don't be afraid to like and subscribe. There will be more videos. I've also written an article about the FiNi loop on my website, and I will put that link in the description. You can find many more articles about ISFPs, as well as the other Myers-Briggs personality types and the Enneagram types on my website at psychologyjunkie.com. You can also find out more in my ebook, Discovering You, Unlocking the Power of Personality Type. I hope to see you next time, and everyone have a wonderful weekend. Bye, everybody.